Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And happy Canada Day to all of you who celebrate it, because in that country, of course, today is a huge day. Not just because it's their Independence Day, but because it also means the opening of National Hockey League free agency, which has been underway since 11 a.m. Central. It's Judd. It's AJ. It is a ton to unpack. And AJ, let's start with the news of the day regarding the Wild, since that's our show here on Judd's Hockey Show. The Wild has signed Yakov Trenin, who is a forward, a center, 27 years old, who spent the majority of his career with the Nashville Predators. He played for John Hines, who obviously now is the Wild coach there, before he was traded at the deadline to the Colorado Avalanche this past season. Trenin has signed a 4-year, $14 million contract, an AAV of $3.5 million. This comes after the Wild made a trade, and we did our podcast on Saturday before this for Jacob Lauko from the Boston Bruins. In that trade, the Wild sent Lettieri back to Boston, where actually he came to the Wild as a free agent last year from. He is a bottom six guy who can play wing. He is tough. As you were telling me off the mic before the show started, he actually in back-to-back games against the Wild fought the two former Wild Deweys, Connor Dewar and Brandon Duhaime. But let's start with Trenin, because he's the most impactful potentially player. What do you make of this, and how do you think, Age, that this actually affects what the Wild plans to do? Because the one thing that we do know is that there are a lot of young players who are going to enter training camp, if nothing else, at least vying for spots in 2024-25.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I think maybe you and I and our friend of the show, Jesse Pierce, may have wanted that maybe splash pay for a second-line winger to maybe demote the likes of a Marcus Johansson, get somebody a little more scoring. It was pretty apparent from our past talk with Bill Guerin. He's been talking about it now for the past month or so. It seems like that a big role for this team to kind of find, and the identity to find again, is that physicality and that grit, and ultimately needing more depth. And that's exactly what it seems like this move is, signing Trenin to a 4-year deal. To my knowledge, I don't think he has any no-trade clause in it, or no move clause.
We'll find out.
We'll have to move.
I fear.
It seems like right now it hasn't been recorded, but
yeah.
It seems like maybe as the day goes on, we get a little more details on it. But what this does is he's a guy that kills penalties, and the Wild had one of the worst penalty kills in all of the league last season. So this is a guy that comes in, you immediately put him in to kill some of those minutes, kill off penalties. And he's a 6'2", 205-pound or so center who can play out wide as well. It's a physicality. I mean, this is a signing that I think screams Billy Guerin. It's not the flashiest of moves, but what it does do is bulk up and add a little depth. And one little note here is that he's not bad at producing either, in terms of like over 5-on-5 play at 60 minutes. He does average 0.7 goals in that type of situation. So it's not like he's out there to just, be a physical guy. Like, he does have a little bit of a scoring touch. He had a goal this past playoff run for the Avalanche. And if you go back and watch that, I mean,
yep.
He's got a motor on him. He doesn't stop. He does go ahead and, throw the body around, and he'll take it back from guys when needed. But it's not going to be a guy that is going to slot in and score 20, 25 goals for this team. He's there to be a physical penalty killing threat. And that's exactly what I think the payment is there. Whether that's the right value,
right,
is a discussion.
And Hines knows him, so he's comfortable there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is certainly not a bargain.
No, it's not.
It's not a bargain. Now, it's also not Perron.
Yes.
It's also not an old guy who's going to come in here and gum up the lines. So I'm sort of torn here. First of all, let's go back to what you said about the character, toughness.
Yeah.
However you want to phrase that.
Okay.
Because I think there's some misconception about this team last season especially, okay? I don't think that this team wasn't tough enough as far as on the ice. They fought. They had guys that would fight, right? Like, they didn't back down from fights. It wasn't like they were afraid to fight or afraid to play a physical game. What I come back to from a toughness standpoint is the the kicker of the Ryan Hartman quote that we talked about with Guerin a month or so back when he appeared on JHS, which was when Ryan Hartman basically said, when we were down, after 2 periods, I didn't feel like we had the team to come back. And this is the first time I'm saying that. Said something that was very cutting and accurate, but very cutting. And I think that's what we're talking about here. I don't think we're talking about, I don't think that this team was necessarily weak. I think 2 things. One, they did not have anywhere close to 4 complete lines. And I don't mean stars. I just mean 4 complete lines. The other is I hated the mentality. I felt the mentality was really lacking. And so when we're talking about them being tougher, when Guerin is trying to make them tougher, I don't think that's an edict that they need to go out and fight more. I think it is what we have basically seen before the Ryan Reeves acquisition 2 years back, and then basically for the entire season, in my opinion, a year ago age. The word I would use for this team is mentally meek. That was my thing. I didn't think they were mentally strong, and I think Bill Guerin is trying to bring in veterans who are mentally tougher. And that's been a long time problem. I still contend it's part of it, in my opinion, and the captain, Spurgeon, didn't play at all or played very sparingly last season. In my opinion, it's also a captain thing. Mm-hmm. I think this team has consistently lacked a lot of times leadership. And I think because of that, they have come off as mentally weak. So I think that there's a difference between, hey, they got to get tougher because they got to fight more. They fought. They would fight. Yeah. I just thought that they were mentally really, really weak. And, there was a lot of want to things they didn't do well. And I guess my question is, where did that fall on? They just didn't have some good players. And where it fell on, they just didn't have the gumption, if that's the correct word, to get through games. So this intrigues me on that. Now, I will say this, though. This is my fear here. And I do not have a problem with a lack of moves today. So, if they're not signing guys, that's fine. Because we've seen this before.
Yes.
Where I have a question is, how much is this possibly going to take away from a young guy who has a good training camp, and then you're like, well, but we really can't play him enough. Because I also don't want that one. This is we are on, make no mistake, I don't think this is a playoff team, okay?
No.
Sorry. No. For 24-25, I don't think that they are a playoff team. But in saying that, this is an incredibly pivotal season in the future of this franchise. So don't get me wrong on, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, to be like, oh, well, then who cares? No, I care a lot. I don't want to see some veteran gumming up the works. And so the list of prospects that you can go through more than I can of guys that you want to see get log jammed because, we can't play them enough here. Get me on this?
And to go directly into that point, before this morning, before the Trenin signing, here's what the projected Minnesota Wild lines are for early October when they open the season. First line, Kirill Kaprizov, Marco Rossi, Matt Zuccarello. Second line, Marcus Johansson, Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy. Third,
let me digest that a little bit. I got to throw up.
Third line, Marcus Foligno, Marat Husnadinov, Ryan Hartman. Fourth line, Liam Ogren, Freddie Gaudreau, Jacob Lauko. And now you add a guy like Trenin into the mix. That seems like a little bit of a crowded room. No? That seems like one of those guys.
Yeah, who comes out?
Somebody has to come out that maybe tells me, are they going to make a trade? Because I know they're very, the hands are tied behind their back to an extent, but who's going to get traded there? I know they had been floating. We had heard the Rossi name for a long time. But I feel like that's not the guy to move out at this point. It seems like you have to get one of these guys to agree, hey, I'll waive my no trade clause to make a move to where, just so I'm not sitting, so I can play hockey. I don't know who that is, though. And that's the tough part here is this move ultimately is going to take away a spot, I think, from one of these guys that we have seen in the minors. And go ahead.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah, fire away.
Can you get, and it's been a while since I looked, but can you get Gaudreau to waive protection that I think he does have and trade him for a bag of pucks? You're not going to get a thing for him, but just to get him off the roster? Can you do that? Because he's Dean's guy. He's not John Hines' guy.
No.
In fact, in some ways, Trenin sounds like Heinze's Goudreau.
Yeah.
Like he's the guy he likes because he's big. He knows what he can do. He coached him the PK thing, So because and what I also don't want though is to circle back. I don't want Ogren to have a good camp and then we just can't play him, can't find room for him.
That's my big thing too. Is like to your point, it's a pivotal season, but I still want to have these guys and. You could argue that, you want them to maybe make the playoffs so you get the playoff experience. I don't really care about that. I just want to get these younger guys time on the ice, playing at that NHL level so that it's not, we're not doing this whole adjustment period when you're supposed to be really taking steps forward and winning.
Correct.
I want to get the trial and error out of the way.
Amen.
But the problem here with this signing here is you just signed Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman to contract extensions in the past year. Goudreau has 4 years left at 2.1 million AAV.
Yeah, I know.
Which, it's 2.1, so can I live with that? Yeah, but it's 4 years, and I don't really like the idea of having a Freddie Goudreau on my roster for another 4 seasons.
And I'm seeing on our comments 15-team no trade.
Yes, that is correct.
JJ, thank you very much. But yeah, he says 15-team no trades.
Yes, and I thought that was only a
so he's
10, but it is a 15. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Ryan Hartman has a 15-team no-trade list as well. Marcus Foligno has a 15-team no-trade list. And then, let's see, when it comes to... I'm trying to think. And yeah, the point here is you're not necessarily, fully out of the mix. Can you trade these guys? Yes, but it's going to be really tough to because you have half of the league pretty much blocked on their list. And Marcus Johansson has the full no trade clause, which is insane for a final $2 million year.
I don't care that he was good in the World Championships in Sweden. I keep seeing that. Stop with that. World Championships don't mean a damn thing, okay? First of all, you're playing, as far as I know, on the bigger ice sheet. Second of all, this is what he does. He's a tease. He's a hockey tease. I don't want to hear that he had 6 goals for Team Sweden in 9 games. And I think that this person is joking about that. But I've heard that now. Well, look, he played well. That's enticing. He got you to sign him to a contract that you never should have done because he played well when his contract was up. He is as transparent a player as possible. And the fact that you read a second line to me that still has this guy on a rebuilding team makes me sick.
I can't stand it. I really can't stand it. I don't understand what is this coaching staff seeing him? What is it?
I don't think anything. They got bamboozled before this coaching staff.
But to my point then is why keep playing him in that significant of a role? Send the message.
I agree. You're right.
Plant the seed in his mind that says, look, we don't really want you here. I know we're stuck with you, but right now we don't want you here. And maybe that drives him to be a little more in the sense of, okay, maybe if they want to move me, I'll be a little more open to the idea of waiving that no move clause. But
yep.
This move today, signing Trenin to a 4-year deal, is he's not old by any means. Like he said, he's not a David Perron where it's like he's going to be a slug out there.
Right.
It's a guy that adds a little physicality and depth to a roster that you said was mentally meek, and I like that term.
Yeah,
mentally meek.
Because they weren't not tough.
No, but what this does too is this is another guy where how many times last season do you see a team cross checks to the back of the rib cage to a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, to a guy like Matthew Boldy? This is another guy that you're not going to have a shift off where no offense to a Mason Shaw or a Connor Dewar or a Connor Duhaime, but this is a guy that has a little more meat, a little size, who you're going to remember that he took you into the corner. You're going to remember that you went shoulder to shoulder with a guy like Trenin compared to a Mason Shaw. So add some size, add some depth, adds a little grit, and I mean, we'll have to see after a year or two how well this one pans out, but it seems to me maybe initially like an overpay by a little bit. I don't think it's like you're breaking the bank by any means, but it is. Yeah. It does feel like a slight overpay given what his role is.
I probably don't like the term more than the actual financial commitment.
If it was 3 years, I think I would not blink an eye at this.
It's the term.
It's that 4th year.
I don't need a 4th year. I don't need another guy that's that might be here when things turn around or might not. It feels like you're bogged down with a lot of these guys. And so, look, if he can play and Hines can use him. But the bigger problem then is like the Goudreau thing. He is I hate to say it because nice guy, useless. Like if they deem him to be useless, he's useless. And now what are you going to do? You know, so if you were to go back and say, okay, this looks to me, which is what you said at the outset of the show, like a potential move is coming. Who do you think is moving among the forwards?
That's a great question.
And it can't be like, it's got to be a guy that you can move, not that you have to go to and bag. But like if you could move a guy, and to your point, Rossi is not that guy.
No.
Who do you think moves?
My initial one, given his like cap hit, he's got 4 more years at 2.1. If you tell a team, hey, Freddie Gaudreau, you're not on his list, and we'll hold on to a little bit of cash. I mean, that's the tough part about this too, is if you want to lessen the room, you're probably going to have to hold on to a little bit of salary for one of these guys. And
right.
Freddie Gaudreau makes the most sense. And granted, how attractive is he to another team? I don't know. Is there a team that would
He's got to get a job, and I'm not joking.
Yes.
He didn't get a job.
No.
Give him a job. You know,
Well,
Seattle, I think the Senators talked to him. That's what you needed.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, to his benefit, he does work hard. It doesn't, like,
Good guy.
Good guy. He does work hard. It's
Yeah.
just skill-wise, he doesn't really add too much to this roster, in my opinion. So if you go to a team, hey, we're willing to give you him, we'll hold on to $1 million, so you really have him at almost the minimum contract.
Right.
I think you could probably do that, but it's going to be tough to say just to any team, hey, you're doing us a favor, essentially. And because if they don't retain any salary, that would be a massive move by Bill Guerin. But I feel like then you're giving up some sort of draft pick, and they have a couple of those in 2026, a couple extras in the later rounds. But it seems like you're going to be giving something away just to open a room for a guy like Trenin, which feels like a step backwards.
Yes, especially if he takes away playing time from guys that you can see.
Yeah.
Like I have no problem if Bill Guerin is trying to, in his mind, improve the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with that. Like, I get that. Because the last 2 years, I think this team has come out really mentally weak. But if those guys are now going to stop guys from playing, that's a problem. So this is, again, a very fine line here. Mm-hmm. It's a very fine line, but it's critical to get this right, and it's critical not to be spending where you don't need to spend it. Now, the cap did go up a little bit again for this next year, the most it's gone up in quite some time, and probably more importantly, it's going to go up probably significantly with the Parise and Suter buyouts being significantly lessened next summer. But all of that being said, I don't want to continue to take up roster spots because I'm banking on a guy being a character player if that means I can't play guys. And there's just a lot of pieces that I think still, ultimately, when this team does hopefully turn the corner age, I think there's pieces that have to be filtered out. And that includes current guys, too. That includes how much longer is Zuccarello going to be like a viable part of this team? I don't know. You know, there's an obvious and very nice little core group, in my opinion. And I think that because of that core group and the prospects, the future is bright. But you got to do this right. And you got to be, and it can't be, we're going to do everything we can to be a playoff team in 2024-25 because that's what Craig wants. It's got to be what's going to be best for the future here. And as we can pivot to as well, AJ, this conference and division going to be tough. It's getting tougher.
Yeah.
It's getting tougher. Yeah. So if there was ever a year, and I'm not saying to tank, okay? Not saying to tank. This is not a tanking, but if there was ever a year to take a step back again and be like, okay, we're taking our lumps, but it's starting to make a lot of sense, this coming season is it. I would hate to chase the ghost of a playoff spot at the expense of the future when I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be doing exactly that. I would rather go into a season with an idea that we have now built up what we think can be a winning team and a team that can make a playoff run, as opposed to, I think we can chase it. I think we can get a first-round playoff berth. I don't care about that. I care about, can you chase a championship? And right now, this team is nowhere near that. I just like what they've got coming down the pike.
Yeah, and today, as Wild fans around the state are sitting watching all of these teams, Sam Reinhart, Chandler Stevenson.
Sam Reinhart, by the way, you screwed the league. That contract. Oh boy, buddy boy.
I mean, hey, what?
If I was the Union, I'd be livid. That was, you talk about taking a home team discount. Oh my God.
Oh, boy.
Mitch Marner should go and personally beat him up.
He might actually.
He screwed Marner.
When you look at this season, you said, I'm not also opposed. This is and we'll talk about this here shortly, but a division now based on what other teams are doing, signings, and Utah actually looking like crazy how a change of location and change of name,
ownership,
suddenly an ownership makes you a
Ryan
team that
Smith's
wants
going to
be.
send like a drunk, and he's going to spend like a drunken sailor, which ultimately might hurt them, but in the short term is probably going to have them popping up.
Absolutely. And so for the Wild, I think power rankings wise, it dropped. But this season right now is not like a do or die. It's pivotal. But I think the 25-26 is probably it's the final year of a contract for Kirill Kaprizov, where frankly, you're probably going to have to show him we have these cards in place, we have these chips in place, and we are on the upswing.
Yep.
We're going to want to extend you, but it's more of he's going to want to be extended here. You have a couple of, like Matt Zuccarello is going to be gone after that season as well, but you have to be making these moves to where you have more money off the books with the massive cap penalty right now dropping after this season. So Billy Guerin is going to be able to maybe make a splash signing or two a year from now. Kirill Kaprizov has to be convinced that these young guys that in the works that you and I are both excited about are developing and going to contribute and have an impact on this team in the correct way to where when he does hopefully take an extension and sign here for longer term, when it comes to the 27, 28, 28, 29, 29, 30 seasons, they're not just making the playoffs. They're setting themselves up to where they're winning the division. Maybe they're second in the division because I think it's going to be a lot tougher here the next few years. But it's not a first round exit. It's we're in the second round. We're pushing game 7. Okay, now we're into the conference finals. Oh, look at that. Maybe we battled through a long series. We're in the cup final now. You have to show him that the foundations of this team are set and they're exact. Like you can build a house on this. We can't just be building an outhouse with this, wide old, you have the pillars and stuff.
Right.
You want a nice luxurious mansion for a guy like Kirill Kaprizov. And this season, pivotal, next season is probably your do or die defining moment for not just a Kirill Kaprizov, but for a Bill Guerin in his plan for the team.
Yes. I would rather actually not try to sell out to make the playoffs this year than I would make the first round and then backslide in 2025, 26. That could cost people their job. And it's not asking them to lose, but it is saying you got to play the right players. And if these kids, if some of them show up and have good training camps, you're going to have some decisions. You cannot rely on, we got these veteran guys. I feel it's weird because it's clearly a cutthroat league. Sports is by its nature cutthroat. But I feel like there's a loyalty here at times, no trade clauses. And that's a league-wide thing as well. But, there's a loyalty here at times. And I got news. You know what? Tampa Bay, and it appears harsh, Steven Stamkos is gone now. You know why? Because they created cap space and everyone said it's to keep Stammer. And it wasn't. It was to go get Jake Gensel. The Rangers, Drury, their GM. What did he do? Barclay Goodrow had a no move clause, right?
Yeah.
I believe, or a no trade clause. Anyway, he put him on waivers. He got claimed by the Sharks, one of the teams he didn't want to go to at all. That's a harsh move. You know what? That's how the league operates. And so you got to do things like that. You got to, it's one thing to be loyal. It's another to be sentimental. And I feel like sometimes this team gets into a sentimentality that doesn't allow it to necessarily make the moves that it needs to make.
The funny thing about that Goudreau situation is I don't think it was a full no move or no trade. I think it was like a 10 or 15 team.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, I think.
And the report I saw was that inside information leak that multiple teams would have probably traded something.
Yep.
But instead,
He didn't want to be traded, though.
and that's the thing, he didn't want to. But they pretty much said, we're going to do whatever it takes to just not have you on our roster this year. And that's the kind of cutthroat stuff that Billy Guerin is going to have to probably do here over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And this is where for me, we talked about this the other day, but similar to my mini Jake Middleton rant. But you would have thought that for an hour or two, the world was ending when the Wild didn't announce an extension or a qualifying offer to Mason Shaw.
Yeah, I saw some of that on Twitter. Yeah, you can't do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be serious as an organization. I understand, like, maybe this is the season where you could probably have him for one more year, but now after this signing,
there's nowhere to play him.
There's nowhere to play him.
I mean, he can go to Des Moines.
Yes, and
I guess if he wants to. I mean, they could still sign him there. That's fine. But there's nowhere to play him. He is not an NHL. He's not going to be, unless guys again get hurt. He's a great story, but he's not going to be on the roster. No. There is no room. It's hard enough to find room to play guys that should play. I saw a comment that you put up there briefly about the Predators. Nashville is going crazy.
Oh boy, they are.
They are indeed. So, and again, a division rival. Okay, they signed ex-Gopher, ex-Ranger, ex-Hurricane now defenseman Brady Shea, 7 years, $49 million. They signed Steven Stamkos, 4 years, $42 million. They signed Jonathan Marchessault, 5 years, $27.5 million, which is pretty cheap, but he's 33.
Yep.
Stamkos, 34. Shea, 30. But Nashville has, for better or for worse, and again, this is a dangerous day because we get all excited about these guys, right? Oh, my God, Nashville is, and in 2 years, you're like, what were we thinking? But for now, they are going for it.
Yes, and this is exactly what kind of we talked about with this season. Like, the Wild, they just don't have enough to really make an impact signing. They don't have, frankly, the room to call up a young, exciting prospect. You're going to get guys, hopefully, like an Ogren or a Husnudinov, more time to make an impact and get more kind of just legs and get more accustomed to the NHL game. But how much are they really going to do compared to a team signing Brady Shea, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, all in a matter of 90 minutes? You know, that's a team that says we are serious, we're going for it. Similar to also kind of what we saw with extensions from Winnipeg last season, locking down Scheifele and Hellebuck at the time.
Yep.
That paired with kind of what you're seeing from Utah, who now, like you said, they're spending more, but it's probably going to come back and get them at the end of the day. Even, frankly, the team that I think a lot of Wild fans are probably hoping doesn't rise back up as quickly as we saw them fall, the Chicago Blackhawks. They make a handful of moves today, bringing Tyler Bertuzzi in for 4 years.
I've given up on them, though. I can't figure them out.
I can't either, but they still bring in Teuvo Teravainen for 3 years.
Yep.
Craig Smith and Pat Maroon on 1 year deals.
Patty Maroon. So you're now taking roster spots for Foligno and Maroon, which of course this team did with Nick's brother. But Chicago's a weird one because every year I'm like, okay, they're going to improve, and they don't. Now they got a ton of prospects, but I mean, I think the Predators are an example of the drunken sailor July 1st mentality, and the names are awesome, but they're old. What did you make of Ryan Suter? The news broke last week, bought out from his last year, surprise by Dallas. And today, Dallas comes to a 2-year, $5.5 million agreement with Matt Dumba. Matt Dumba now could potentially turning the puck over at inopportune times for the Dallas Stars.
That gave me a chuckle, is what I'll say. That gave me a chuckle. It's a revolving door. Am I surprised by the Suter buyout? No, because I think I was tipped off to that by some kind of Stars like beat writer had tweeted something like, hey, I'm hearing conversations about this, but Matt Dumba going there is a little funny, just given the history and kind of the vitriol that he's gotten from that fan base late with his time at the Wild, and since then having just series against them in the playoffs. But that seems like a very lateral step just maybe a little younger. You have one guy who,
Right.
and maybe not personality-wise. I think probably personality-wise, Matt Dumba is a league above what Ryan Suter is, but in terms of probably what they bring to that defensive core, it seems like you're really not making too much of a move. And granted, there are different games and everything like that, but Matt Dumba just really isn't what his early days were with the Wild, where you had this cannon of a shot and everything. After the fight against, I can't even remember who it was.
Tkachuk.
Was it Tkachuk?
Yep. Matthew.
Of course it was.
With Calgary.
After the fight with Tkachuk, I mean, he hasn't been the same at all. So when it comes to kind of that addition there, I know Jesse and I were both very big on that. Probably makes the most sense for the Wild on
I was very happy they did not.
A short-term, low-term deal.
Yeah, I was happy that they did not go down that path.
$3 3/4 mil for him is interesting. That is really interesting. And I think that's heavily front-loaded in terms of what the actual cap hit's going to be. I think most of that is this coming season. So Matt Dumba going to the Dallas Stars does give me a little chuckle, but am I super surprised by it? No, especially not by the Ryan Suter buyout. My question was, did he hang up?
The fans couldn't stand him.
Did he hang up on the general manager when he got the call?
Oh, he's pissed. Well, and he's not going to go. He's going to get a job. He's going to try and get a job. He's not going to retire, which he probably should do. The Dallas fans couldn't stand him. He played a ton there, but he was actually a less productive player for them. When the Wild bought him out, there was a genuine shock because as far as playing went at that time, I don't think he was the liability that he became in Dallas, but part of the problem was he always played too much. I will say this. Here's the good trade-off, okay?
Okay.
Dallas signs Dumba, but they were forced to trade because he didn't re-sign with them Chris Tanev's rights, and Chris Tanev then negotiates a 6-year, $27 million deal. He's not young, 34, but the defenseman with Toronto. Dallas tried to keep him and wanted to, and Chris Tanev's a pretty good, he knows his role. Mm-hmm. And so if Matt Dumba is helping replace Tanev, that's a good trade for the conference. So that's one where if I am a fan of the Wild, no, I don't think it's going to help him a ton, but I would far prefer to see Matt Dumba in a Stars sweater than Tanev. What did you make of, again, bottom line Lightning? They're just incredible. So Carolina, I think the story went, trades for Gensel at the deadline. And then at some point in time, they talked about, I think, 8 times 8. And Gensel said he would, or that's what Jake said he wanted. And so at some point in the last few weeks, I guess, according to the reporting I heard, Carolina just assumed, hey, we'll come back with 8 times 8 and keep Jake. And I mean, the guy's a very good player. Well, it sounds like by that point, Gensel had said, you know what, I'm going to explore my opportunities. So Carolina traded his rights yesterday to the Lightning, and he gets 7 times 9 from the Lightning. That's a move I absolutely love because he's 29. Mm-hmm. You know, to go back, I think I said Stamkos was 34. I think that this is a fantastic move, and this is why a team like the Lightning that keeps things, doesn't go with sentimentality necessarily, keeps the train going. This is a hell of a move by Tampa Bay.
Oh, I agree. That's the guy that produces, he scores goals. He's got a track record of winning caliber, NCHC product, if I can, harp on that.
Hell of a player.
Great. Oh, yeah. Hell of a player. But 29, you give him this deal. And I think the shock of a lot of these guys testing free agency there shouldn't be too much shock because this is the most, if my stats and everything serve me right, the most the salary cap has gone up in one single period in NHL history. So teams hypothetically,
late 2016, 17 or something like that. Because yes, it definitely plateaued. It did not increase for years.
Yes,
you are correct.
So they teams hypothetically have more money than ever to spend. So when it comes to testing and betting on yourself, Jake Gensel just pulled off, and his agent, credit to them, his team pulled off a very good deal, and they capitalized. That's a great term. And to your point, credit to the Lightning because they recognized, all right, we do have this guy that has been with us since we drafted him. He's a legend in his own right. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's going to probably want more than what we can do, and we can't keep him here. And I think this is maybe where the Capitals kind of falter. Not that I think they can let a guy like Ovechkin go, but
right.
The Lightning say, all right,
Yes.
Steven, thank you for your time. We're going to have to move on. And, he's probably like, that's fine with me. I'm going to go to Nashville, get paid a little bit more. And what I'll say for them is it seems like when they have a parting of ways with a legacy player like that or just a bigger name, they keep it civil. Whereas what I'm seeing from Jonathan Marchessault, the comments about Vegas and his, the final maybe few months of possible negotiations with them, it's like a scorned player. It's like
it got personal with him.
It sounds like it. He said something along the lines. I'll have to go and find it, but they just didn't really try too hard when it came to
They might not have. They've got so many players, and they pay so much. There's a good chance they didn't try that hard.
Yeah, and it's very weird. But I love the Jake Gensel deal. That one I think is going to come back and. Even 4 or 5 years down the road, even the final few years of that deal, you're going to be like, that. I would still make that deal 10 out of 10 times. The
right.
Lightning, I think, with another great free agency signing.
Thoughts on Chandler Stevenson, speaking of the Golden Knights, the left winger goes 7 times 6.25 with the Kraken, who do need goal scoring.
Yes, and maybe it might.
And he's 30, so he's not a kid himself.
I'm going to have to pull up his numbers here because I feel like that seems like a little bit of a overpay. I could be wrong, though. Maybe I'm thinking of a different player off the top of my head. But when it comes to Chandler Stevenson, like, that's a nice move and all, but did he benefit from being on such a good Vegas team with better players around him?
Right.
Because this is not at all comparable, but I'm going to.
It's a lot.
Warren Fogle signed with the Kings, if I am keeping track of everything.
Yep.
And he got a 3-year, $3.5 million deal.
Yep.
I don't think Warren Fogle is that great of a player, but he spent time a lot of the season on a line with either McDavid or Draisaitl.
It helps.
So that type of thing helps. And I think, now granted, they have some other good players there in Los Angeles, so I'm not saying that it's going to be a huge drop-off by any means, but they don't have a McDavid or Draisaitl on that team. So I feel like the Chandler Stevenson signing here, as my webpage loads, it feels like an overpay. I don't know how that's necessarily.
It's a lot of term.
Let's see here. I mean,
it's a lot of term.
16 goals, 35 assists, 51 points last season with the Knights. Otherwise, he's had 16 goals, 21 goals, 14 goals. That just feels like an overpay. And if they have the money to spend, Seattle, by all means, you go ahead. That's your cap. Go ahead. But 6.25 for Chandler Stevenson right now feels like a lot. Especially, I think it's going to feel like a lot when he's 35 years old.
That's what I was going to say. That's the term problem. It's not just the money can be a problem, but when you go 7 years, which is the max that you can sign a player that you don't own, that's the problem. Like, that's the one where he's 30 now. So, okay, is he going to be part of potentially a Stanley Cup team with the Kraken? And the problem too is you sign a guy like that and the expectation, right, of where he plays goes up. Here's an interesting one in the Eastern Conference. Elias Lindholm, the center, who the Canucks tried very hard to keep, 7 times 7.75 in Boston. 29. He actually didn't have a great season, but he was very good in the playoffs for the Canucks. But a good team, a consistent team, gets him. That one does intrigue me. And he came in under 8, but yeah, 7 times 7.75 for Elias Lindholm.
What I'll say about that one is this is a guy that had 82 points back in 21-22. He had 42 goals that season. He's at least shown to me that he can do it. In Calgary that year, they were good. But it's a kind of a weird package deal because I believe they also announced right after that Nikita Zadorov as well going out to Boston.
Did they? I hadn't seen that one yet. Interesting.
Yeah, so they added Zadorov.
The Canucks are pissed.
Absolutely. 6 years, $5 million AAV there for a $30 million deal for Zadorov. That one, I think, honestly, might be one of the deals of the day because that guy looked like a reincarnation of Bobby Orr at times in the playoffs for the Canucks. And that's a joke because
Right.
it was a flash in the pan, and he's not going to do that all season long.
Right.
But that is a massive body. That's a guy who is physical. Frankly, he kind of screams Boston Bruins hockey.
And Canucks tried hard to keep him as well.
Exactly. So
Jim Rutherford did.
those two signings going out to Boston, at 29, I think maybe you could argue it more, but he has to have a big rebound year.
Yeah.
Like this is a year from now.
Yes.
If he doesn't have 30 goals,
In the regular season, he's got to do way more.
yes, if he doesn't have 30 goals or, at least like 65 points, 60 points, you're going to be thinking, okay, maybe we should have not offered him over $7 million.
Yes. Tyler Bertuzzi, as you broached his name before, 29-year-old left wing goes from Toronto to Chicago, 4 times 5.5. That's actually fairly low. This is a good contract. This is the type of contract I want.
Yes,
He would have been interesting here. I will say that. I don't care much, but he was the type of guy that I said, at his age, that's not bad. And 4 times 5.5, I think, is an ideal term, and it's a very, very fair salary.
I would like to know if there is a no move or no trade clause on that at all, because if there's not, that is an unbelievable deal, and maybe the deal of the day, because given his age, given his style, and kind of the history.
Deal of the day. I like that.
I'll say it.
The deal of the day.
Get a little jingle to it.
Yep.
Because the Blackhawks, are they going to be a contender anytime soon? Not this year, probably not the season after, but they've had a couple good drafts now back to back. They're kind of in the same spot as the Wild, where they're going to have almost some of these like older vets clogging the pipelines for their younger up and coming. Who's that? Reichel, German guy who, he's should be getting heavy playing time, I think, this season.
Yep.
But Bertuzzi, he's shown that he can be productive. He's coming off a down year, and I think the Blackhawks capitalized on that, because getting him at 5.5 for 4 years at age 29, I mean, if they can move him after, when he's 31, a team's going to maybe want that for like a final piece of the puzzle, especially if they have enough room to keep him for that 5.5 for one more season.
Do you think he was smart enough, or potentially his agent was, to take a potential Bedard discount?
Ooh.
Because if he's going to play with Bedard, he's going to score.
You know what? I didn't even think about that. That could be interesting.
I mean, I could see leveraging that into a few really big years. Now, it's a 4-year contract, so you are tied up for a while. It's not terrible. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if there's some assurances about him playing with Connor.
Because they still have Taylor Hall next season? They do. They have him for one more year.
He's a fossil now, man.
And that's the thing.
He's in an old folks home with me.
Yeah, they might bump Hall down to that second line with a guy like Athanasiou or Reichel. But the thing is, Reichel should be there.
And Hall can be bumped down. At this point in his life,
he doesn't care.
I would sign Bertuzzi to play him with Connor.
That could be it, because that's also a guy who's going to protect Connor as soon as, like, Connor, I saw, and this was a weird pandemic over the last season where some of these younger stars just don't expect to be hit when they go into the corner or along the wall. Yeah. And we saw Connor Bedard take a couple brutal hits at times.
The blue line hit against the Devils, that was all his fault.
Oh, yeah. And
totally looking down at the puck. Can't look at the puck.
But when it comes to on that bench, in the front office, in the stands there, nobody cares whether or not he was looking or not, and whether it's his fault or not. If you hit him, they're going to have to back something up. And Tyler Bertuzzi's not.
And Foligno did too.
Yes.
Like Nick went and fought the Devils defenseman that hit Bedard. And I think they basically both said, it's a fine hit, but I got to fight you for this.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was also a game where he was like mic'd up.
And hockey fans went, oh, no, there might be a fight. It's 2024. There can't be a fight.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're at that stage, are we?
All right. So final thoughts for now. And if we get more news, we will certainly circle back with another YouTube JHS/podcast. But do you think the Wild for free agency and for right now is done with moves, or do you think we're going to get another signing and or a trade, i.e. a Gustafsson trade of some sort? Something I would contend. I think the goalie market's really weak and drying up. So I'm not so convinced now. And there's a lot of guys out there. So do you think, AJ, we get something else?
I do. I think it's going to be kind of boring in terms of signings. I think, if anything, it'll be more of the like Devin Shore, or who was the other name that escapes me right now. The kind of two-way, you're going to have him down in the AHL, or maybe as a 13th forward, he'll get the call up at times. But trade-wise, I really think something's coming. You don't make this move and have that crowded of a forward group without having something maybe in the works to clear the way, because if we go through another season where these guys that are 30 and up are taking time away from guys 24 and younger, Judd, I'm going to lose my mind. We have to start seeing these younger guys get more playing time.
Worst case, I'm going to paint you a worst case AJ Fredrickson scenario.
Oh, no.
Because there always is an inherent pressure from the top of this team to win. Do you think we are looking at a younger player? Doesn't have to be Marco, okay? Do you think we're looking at a younger player being moved?
Could it be? I think.
Well, I'm just saying that your veterans got no trade protections. I don't know that they want to trade them. They just signed, Foligno, Zuccarello, Hartman to extensions before last year. Goudreau's got protection. And look, if they get rid of Goudreau, first of all, good. And second of all, it's not like some big move. But I'm just saying, do you think we're missing something here with a younger player being dealt? I hope not, but I want to know what your gut feeling is. Ooh, that's a good one. Stodd's got a good one down there on the comments.
This is exactly what
okay, now talk about it. Preach.
This is exactly
now. This would change how I feel.
If the reports were true ahead of the draft that they were seriously considering, and it would depend on how things fell at that draft on Friday night, they wanted to maybe move that 13th pick, maybe more, for a Rucker McGroarty. If they clearly like him that much to think about moving that deal,
yep.
Why not? Why would they still not like it? Why would they not like him now 48 hours after the fact, And if they've been floating that Rossi move around in their mind, who knows? It's like a Rossi for McGroarty plus something else, or the other way around. It's a Rossi plus something else for McGroarty. It's in division, and I think Winnipeg still is going to probably want, despite that we all know that he wants to go and they're going to trade him, they're still going to want in division the Wild to pay a little bit more than another team if it were, say, the Carolina Hurricanes or, a team out east. I think that's a deal where on paper both teams are going to nod, say, yep, absolutely, we know what we have. With Marco Rossi, he was a first-team all-rookie NHL player. He was 6th in Calder voting. You've seen him develop. He's taken that step forward, which I still think the Wild probably should hold on to. But Rucker McGroarty, we know that if you redraft that, he probably bounces up to the top 5 rather than, I think, 14th where the Jets took him.
Yeah.
He fills a little bit more of a role that I think the Wild are going to want here down the road as well. But it depends on what Bill Guerin thinks will benefit them in the long run. I don't. That is a worst case scenario.
It's a tough one.
If this is the scenario where they get a guy like McGroarty back,
yep,
that's not necessarily worst case because you're getting a young prospect.
Right. I'd be more upset if they try to get a veteran.
Exactly.
And that's my point about trying to win now.
There should be no win now moves made.
I agree.
In the next year, maybe 2 years for
well, certainly not today.
No.
And don't spend. And I like the fact that they're not exactly spending, which they shouldn't be. This is one contract, but again, if you're a Preds fan, today is a lot of fun, but there's a price to pay there because you're not going to be doing this again next July 1, and you're not going, I think the one thing we've learned in watching how free agency in the current National Hockey League plays out, is that you need to be very calculated and careful. And I don't think writing checks is necessarily an answer. I think developing talent and occasionally acquiring a player is a definite approach to take, but it can be like when you're like, we got 4 guys. It's like, okay, but that ties up cap room and you are on the hook. And I'm sure they're giving out no trade clauses left and right. All right. We are.
Before you do wrap up, maybe the signing of the day, not even in free agency. I just saw it roll across the ticker. Matvei Michkov officially penned a paper on his entry-level deal with the Philadelphia
Oh,
Flyers.
that's big. That's huge.
That's massive for them. I mean,
that's huge.
They already had him in the system, but the fact that he's finally coming over to
But you
America,
got to get him here. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly
absolutely.
right.
So Flyers fans rejoice.
Flyers are coming.
He's going to be great.
Flyers are on the come here. All right, we are done. Again, if there is a big trade involving the Wild, if there is a significant signing, which I don't expect, we'll be back with a JHS. Otherwise, we'll be back midweek with Jesse Pierce to review all of the craziness, to talk about the fact that she's so disappointed that David Perron did not sign here, to talk about the fact she legitimately, I think, will be a little bit bummed that Dumba did not sign here. I hope all of those guys have great careers elsewhere. I'm Judd. He's AJ. We'll talk to you soon.